so that for anyone who's not here, they can obviously listen after this. And I can see from the number of you here that almost we are a network, we are a group. It'd be good to stick together, whether it's within the welcome already volunteer WhatsApp group that we've got, or we need to set something up separately in terms of Ukraine, because a number of you here have reacted to the Homes for Ukraine with a desire to give space. I know a few of you have said, we've got a room, we've got place. A number of you have said, well, we would like to support people who come from Ukraine. I mean, many of us won't have the space or be able to give the space, but we'll be able to give the support. And as a community, it's something we can do. But I suppose the question, of course, is how will this all work? How will you find a Ukrainian? I mean, and if you've been listening to the process of how the government has got together the scheme, it seems clear that actually you almost need to find a person who's Ukrainian who is fleeing, as if they will, of course, themselves have the wherewithal when they are leaving Ukraine to go, I'll find a family on Instagram or somewhere that can help me. So to help us think this through, we have Judith Fagelson, who works for World Jewish Relief and works with partners on the ground in Ukraine and other countries in Europe. World Jewish Relief are doing incredible work. I mean, they really are a wonderful organization. Our own Janice Lepapkin couldn't be here today. I mean, in some ways, I think Park pleaded with me not to be here because they're just so busy. They are so busy both with work in Poland, with their partners working in Poland, and of course, thinking through the possibility of a number of refugees coming here. When I talked to Janice, there were at least 700 people who had registered with World Jewish Relief. I'm sure by the look on your face, Judith, that's probably more, and you can help tell us the numbers. So that maybe would be the first bit, to hear from Judith about the process for us to. This is early days, everyone. So it's in a sense learning how the process works, so that we know that we're in place to work with that. And then other ideas, of course, of help that you might have. It'd be good to hear from you what your feelings are and what questions you might also have for Judith as well. So let me hand over to you, Judith. Thank you really for giving us your time. And we'll have about 15 minutes first from Judith, Homes for Ukraine and refugees from Ukraine. Thank you, Judith.
Thank you. And thank you for the outpouring of support that we've had from so many communities, including yours. Let me give a little bit of background as to what we've been doing and also my role within World Jewish Relief, and then I will talk a bit more about how the Homes for Ukraine scheme currently works, how we might expect it to develop, and what World Jewish Relief, the role that we're looking at playing. So I manage our relationships and projects with partners across East Europe, including 29 partner organizations that we work through in Ukraine. So these are local community organizations and NGOs who we support with funding and technical capacity building in normal times with their sort of social development and welfare projects. And over the past month or so, we've pivoted to supporting those partners with their humanitarian response. That has included both supporting people who are unable to flee, and while, as David said, almost a quarter of Ukraine's population has been displaced, that's also 3/4 who haven't. So providing those individuals with food packages, supporting organisations with their salaries for the people who have stayed behind, helping with medical support, hygiene equipment, clean water. But then also, as the focus of today's conversation is, supporting some of those people who have been displaced either internally or outside of the country. So we know that around 6.5 million people, so around 2/3 of those who've been displaced have been displaced internally within Ukraine, and 3.3 million have left the country, which is a huge amount. The majority of those have so far stayed in neighbouring countries. Around 2 million are in Poland, 500,000 in Romania, about 365,000 in Moldova, similar amount in Hungary, 250,000 in Slovakia. But increasingly, we're seeing people looking to go further, either to move within Europe, among the Jewish community, quite a large number going to Israel, but also getting some interest in coming to the UK. There are a number of routes that people can come to the UK. The sort of first route that was open was the family route for those who have a family member, that they can apply for a visa naming their relative in the UK, and that's now been extended. It was initially immediate family, but that's now been extended to grandparents, grandchildren, cousins. So anyone with an existing connection and a relative can apply for a visa through that route. What we're going to be talking about mostly, though, is the Homes for Ukraine scheme, and that is the newly announced scheme. It's been live since last Friday, so just 3-4 days, which enables Ukrainians with no pre-existing connection to the UK to apply for a visa here. So the way that it works, at the moment, it is a community sponsorship scheme. So, and apologies if I'm repeating information you already know. The way that works is the government is asking individuals or families within the UK to offer at least one room in their home, and it can be more, and it can also be a whole flat or a whole house if, for instance, families have an empty house or a house that they would usually rent out, to a named Ukrainian individual or family. So that's the key, is that it has to be, to apply for the scheme, individuals here wanting to host somebody have to name the person or the people in Ukraine who they want to host. There is a portal online where individuals here wanting to host Ukrainians can express or register their interest. And then beyond that, once they have identified the person that they want to sponsor, i.e. host, to come to the UK, they will go through an application process together with the Ukrainians that they want to host, and that's all done online. The Ukrainians will submit all of their data together with the UK sponsor family or sponsor individual. They won't, as long as they have a passport, they won't need to go to a physical visa centre. All the checks will be done online, and then their passport and their documents will be inspected when they arrive here. Individuals or families who want to host a Ukrainian in their home will be given £350 a month from the government to cover their expenses. And they will be expected to host, or to be able to host, somebody for a 6-month period. The question that we've been having a lot is around kind of how would you find somebody in Ukraine? And there are obviously, as David said, Facebook and Instagram groups set up to try and match people. But I appreciate most people will want something a little bit more structured and rigorous. And so that is where World Jewish Relief is trying to come in. We are setting up a matching process where we are reaching out to our networks of partners in Ukraine, but also our partners in Moldova and Poland who are currently hosting people who've crossed the border already. And through our partners, we are taking expressions of interest from their clients and their contacts, Ukrainian residents and citizens who are looking to come to the UK. We're also taking expressions of interest from people here who are looking to sponsor Ukrainian to come to them. And we will be operating a process of matching. We anticipate that will be a relatively long process. We imagine it will take around 4 weeks for us to match a potential offer of accommodation with a suitable Ukrainian family. And there's a couple of reasons why that will take time. First of all, we've just had so many offers, and we're so grateful for all of them. At the moment, we've had just over 1,000 offers of accommodation from people in the UK, and we are going through all of them. Some of them are more suitable than others, and our key priority is safeguarding and making sure that if we are setting up these pairs, that we feel comfortable taking responsibility for that. And so those checks are what is taking time. Local authorities will also be inspecting any accommodation just to make sure that it is suitable, no health hazards, heated, and appropriate for the family or the individual who is due to be hosted. We, over the next few weeks, will also be gathering a little bit more information, both from people who have put themselves forward as potential hosts, and for people who have said they want to be hosted in the UK. So we'll be asking questions around location, around any, the type of accommodation that can be offered, how many people it might be suitable for. We'll also be, because we've been working with both Jewish and non-Jewish individuals, asking questions around religious requirements, so just so that we know that we're matching people up in a way that's going to work for both parties. And the key criteria will be, is the accommodation suitable for the refugees who've come forward to us? In terms of who has responsibility for what, any adults living in the potential host family will undergo a DBS check, so a criminal records check from the government. That is the sort of basic level check that will be happening. And local authorities will also have statutory responsibility for any refugees that are being hosted in their borough. Each local authority will be receiving £10,500 in order to support each refugee that comes through. And it's just to be decided still exactly what wraparound support will be offered, but local authorities will be responsible for instance, making sure people have access to benefits that they're entitled to, helping them find school places, access healthcare, and that sort of thing. We are working with the JLC on a sort of wraparound support package that communities will be able to use. We're looking at potentially providing caseworker support or trauma support with them and with local authorities, but all of that is still in the early stages, and we don't know exactly what that package of support will look like. I mean, that's kind of an overall, I've done a bit of a whistle-stop tour of how the scheme would work, but I think perhaps what might be best is if I open it up to questions, and then I can try and address the questions that come up.
Super. Let me just admit somewhat. Thank you for that. That really is a really helpful start to the process. Do we have any idea, Judith, in terms of numbers so far that are showing interest, numbers of UK refugees showing interest to come to the UK?
Yes and no. So we opened it up to UK hosts about a week or 10 days earlier than we opened it up to potential Ukrainian refugees. So there's a bit of a mismatch in numbers at the moment. I think we've had 60-something individuals come to us from Ukraine so far, but we are working with our partners who are hosting people who've already left the country, so partners in Moldova and potentially in Poland as well, to identify among the hundreds of people that they're supporting if there is a group who could potentially come, a group of families who could come to the UK together and be hosted in one district, one borough, and be near each other. So that at the moment all the requests we've got are individuals, but we're looking at some larger sort of groups of people coming over, which would boost those numbers.
Is there any other agency like you that is doing this matching? Or in other words, so you said there are 1,000 expressions of interest. Do we know how many of the government scheme, how many people have expressed interest in total?
I don't have the figures for the government scheme in total. I know there are 4, I think, other agencies. I don't know of any other agencies within the Jewish community. But I know of 4 other agencies, and I can find their links and post them here if you're interested, who are operating similar matching services.
Yeah, no, just interesting to know. And that's really helpful. So opening up to others, because I'm sure many of you have got questions, either from a perspective, I mean, maybe first from a sense of the housing program. That's probably the first thing, isn't it? And then we can then maybe talk with you, Judith, about what other help you feel we could offer. A wrap around that, the housing possibility. So I saw Daniel, you raised your hand, and I think Mark, you did raise your Mark's hands up. So Daniel, if you want to come in, Daniel.
Yeah, sure. What you mentioned, Judith, thanks for joining us. are we talking here in terms of the people that might come? Are we talking families, or will it be sort of a mother and a child? Because we're reading that men of fighting age aren't sort of really allowed or staying behind. But also, would we be talking children? So, potentially orphaned, or children that, for whatever reason, are separated from parents and would be here essentially, on their own.
Yeah, it's a good question. You're right. Men between the age of 18 and 60 are not being allowed to leave the country unless there are certain exemptions to that. So men who are sole or primary carers of children or relatives with disabilities are exempt. Men with disabilities or particular medical conditions are exempt. I think men who are primary carers of any children, and also men, even if they're not the primary carer, both parents will be allowed to leave if a child in the family has a disability. So there could be small numbers of men under those exemptions. Primarily, we're seeing women, also older people above the age of 60, and mothers with children. Where unaccompanied children have left Ukraine, we haven't seen requests for unaccompanied children, and I would need to double check with Janice, but I think they would be housed under potentially under different schemes. I don't think unaccompanied children are being housed under the sponsorship scheme, but I will need to double check that. Does that answer your question a bit?
Yeah, thanks for that. Does clarify a bit.
Thanks,
Thank
Daniel.
you.
Thank you for that. Of course, thank you, Judith. Mark, if you want to come in now.
Yeah, thanks. Sorry, I don't have my video on. I'm in the car right now. I'm in the process of bringing over a family. I've got a friend who is still in Kyiv. He's not allowed out for the reasons you just described, but his ex-wife and 2 kids, they left the country about 3 days ago, and they're currently in Italy, and I'm working with them right now to try and bring them over. They're not Jewish, but so 2 questions really. One, well, I suppose the one additional point I want to make is what I'm looking to do is rent a flat for them, probably in Barnet. We live in Haringey, but I'm looking in Barnet because thinking ahead to schools. It's probably a lot of information, but I suppose the question is, once I've gone through that process, can we tap into will there be a process to tap into the World Jewish Relief kind of network and resources and support services?
Yes, so we'll be working with councils, and we will be working with Barnet Council as well, I believe. I'm not sure exactly what that will look like, because our main focus at the moment is developing those matching services. So if you've already got somebody and you're already bringing them over, that sort of bypasses that need, but definitely any additional support, wraparound support that we offer, potentially in conjunction with the local council, I'm sure you will be able to tap into.
And then actually kind of a related question that occurred to me, and it might occur to others as well, is this, so there's a 6-month commitment, but it could be, clearly, I mean, obviously this was put together quite quickly, this scheme. And it's possible it might change as details are worked out. But if they come over and then want to move, there might be various reasons why they want to move. If they're coming into someone's home, and there might be reasons why they might want to leave that home, or friends of theirs find something. The various reasons why they might want to move. I'm kind of a bit nervous about the bureaucracy, given the council overlay. I think you mentioned £10,500 per person or per family. Is that what kind of bureaucracy? I mean, you might not know. Do you envisage through if they want to move, or?
Yeah. So the 6-month commitment is a requirement for sponsors, just to guarantee that people at least know they're going to have the stability for 6 months. Anyone coming over from Ukraine will have the right to remain in the country and access benefits and support for 3 years. And there is no requirement on individuals to stay with their host for the 6 months. So if they want to move and have opportunities to move, and including moving to a different council, they will be able to do that without losing access to any of the support or benefits that they've been accessing up until then.
Okay, thanks. That's very helpful. Thank you.
Thanks, Mark. That's great. So we've got now Catherine. Thank you. And then Lisa, and then well, it's either Philippa or Lawrence, or both. But it's very good, Lawrence. So Catherine, thank you.
Thank you so much, firstly, for letting me join this evening. I'm from HGSS. I guess I've got two questions. The first is that the amazing work that you're doing through World Jewish Relief, and you are like the funnel, I suppose, as it were, for everything to come through. Would it be helpful for you, because this is just one community of Jewish people, and then I'm just from another one, but there will be equivalent things going on across the country. Would it be helpful that there was a coordination of effort from the Jewish community here, so that we actually, you're not having to have this conversation 10, 15, however many times over, and that the information, none of this information that you have kindly told us tonight, HGSS know about. And I know that there is very big interest in other communities, obviously, as well. And, to be able to kind of feed out your message as efficiently for you as possible, would it be helpful that there's coordination from our side too?
Yeah, I think that would be very helpful. In terms of how we do that, we've got our sort of FAQ. I'll post the link here as well on our website, and the government has an FAQ as well. We could potentially work with you to expand that, and
we're very happy to help.
I also should just add there, Catherine, I'm actually organising a meeting, and you might hear about on Thursday with the Chief Rabbi for United Synagogue and Provincial Rabbis and people of interest. So Paul Anticoni, who's the head of World Jewish Relief, and Janice hopefully will come to that. So I'll make sure you know that, because that'd be really relevant. So this, this is for Muswell Hill. This is because there is a Muswell Hill interest, and I think I want to make that momentum around Muswell Hill. But I look out for that. There is, and I think World Jewish Relief and JLC, I think, are doing something as well at some point. The Jewish News are organising. So there's stuff that's going to be happening. We're looking
Thank you, because we don't, as you know, we don't have a rabbi at the moment, so there won't be any representation from HGSS on that call. So if you could represent our interest there and say that we're happy on an HO level to do whatever it takes to make this happen for the community and represent our community too.
And the last thing I want to be is the suburbs rabbi. That's not my.
Sorry.
The last thing I want to be is the suburbs rabbi.
No. We have one coming, as you know.
That was humour. That was.
Yeah, but we don't have any rabbinic representation that would be able to be at that meeting. So
that's great. Yeah, lovely, Catherine. But
okay, thank you.
Really good that you're here to relay that as well. Your community does actually a lot of really good stuff, actually, socially. I know people and many people there. So thank you, Catherine.
Thank you very much for inviting me.
Yeah, pleasure. Right, so Lisa.
Hi. Sorry, I have to excuse my slightly rough look. I'm definitely not feeling very well today. I think I've very thankfully come back from a ski trip with COVID along with all my fellow skiers. Anyway, for those of you that don't know me, I'm the Chief Executive. I'm a member of Muswell Hill Shul, firstly, primarily. I'm also the Chief Executive at Jewish Blind and Disabled. And I know, Judith, I've been in contact with some of your colleagues at World Jewish Relief already. We responded about 10 days ago to an article that we read in the Jewish News about a family who were trying to bring over their grandmother and mother, grandmother with dementia, a Holocaust survivor, and mother with disability. And they are in the country and they are living with us at the moment. We are now gearing up. I've got 5 properties which we're gearing up to hopefully get ready if there's any more demand. So I guess there's a lot going on in a sense for us and lots of questions, but my message to all of you is, if you come across through the networks anyone who would benefit from additional support, we have 24/7 support on site. So older people or people with disabilities, send them our way. We're more than happy to help. They can be Jewish or not Jewish. We will help whoever. I've only got a limited number of flats. They're in Redbridge and Kingsbury. and we will ensure that the furnishings and everything is ready. What I guess there's a number of things. One of my big concerns really is that the Homes for Refugees scheme is fantastic and amazing, but I don't think it's suitable for people, older people, people with more complex needs. And I think the government's really missed a point on that. And it's something I have raised with World Jewish Relief, and I know they're going to raise it to the government. At the moment, you know, the £350 offering is just for people hosting. The government have said that they will be able to access benefits, but at this stage, I'm not really sure whether or not that includes housing benefits. So, you know, at the moment, we are happy to swallow that cost. But if there's any additional news on that, Judith, then I'd be keen to hear that from you. If there is, I mean, what we have experienced is that it's not just, for some people, it's really not just about a roof over our head. And as a team, a number of us spent the best part of the last 10 days trying to access services, from health services through to getting occupational therapists in and hearing aids, and it's been really complex, and the trauma involved is enormous. If there is one way that people could help, if we have any Russian speakers amongst our community, then desperately looking for some people to come and give some respite to the mother, so that she can leave grandma in the house, in the flat by herself for a couple of hours and get out and about, because she's really struggling. We are struggling with the lack of Russian speakers. So if you know of any Russian speakers that are looking to do something here, we're really looking for a couple of befrienders, if anyone can help out. And as I say, you know, if any of you know of or come across people who you think could benefit from additional support, then please do get in contact with us. Easiest way is just through JPD's website.
Thanks, Lisa. Really good to have you here. Really, really good to have you here. And I, in some ways, I don't know, Judith, if I see it correctly, that there's almost, the way I see it is that there is obviously the facilitation of a matching process of refugees to hosts, but then there is the council, the statutory, in a sense, casework really that is needed from local councils to ensure GP surgeries, you know, registration, schools if necessary. That's stuff that hosts cannot do, obviously. And so that's clearly important. And then I think I see the third area is the commute, which we can offer, which is a community support for those. So if there are hosts that are members of the community, I don't know, 3 or 4 families are able to do that, that other members of the community can support in other ways those families. It's not, the burden isn't fully on them. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yes, that I would agree with that fully. And if I could also respond to a couple of the points that you made, Lisa. First of all, people coming under the scheme will be entitled to housing benefits, and they will be entitled to that under universal credit if they choose to leave their host, sort of sponsor, and rent privately. As David said, the councils will be responsible for providing all of the sort of statutory support, but I do think there is a role to be played, as you rightly say, for community-based befriending, additional language support. I think until we need to work out exactly what statutory support councils are able to provide, and then we'll be able to better assess kind of where the need for additional support is. In terms of people with additional need, people with disabilities, older people, we're looking at this, I mean, because we work in Ukraine and in Poland and Moldova, and so we're looking at this from a much broader perspective than just the UK. We are not actively looking to bring to the UK people with complex additional needs, disabilities, additional health needs, unless people come to us requesting that. I mean, our experience shows that the more complex somebody's needs are, the more beneficial it is for them to stay as close to home in a familiar environment, and a more culturally familiar, more linguistically familiar environment, as much as possible. So we're looking at either sort of internal, within Ukraine, locations where people can be evacuated to, in rural locations or towns further west that haven't been as badly affected, or then support, placement in Poland and Moldova and neighbouring countries with our communities. Obviously, if there are people coming who you know of and who you're hosting already within the UK, that's a different question, but we're not actively looking to match and bring over people with more complex needs unless they reach out to us asking for that, if that makes sense.
Yeah, can I just ask a question? If so this family came over through the family scheme, but the family don't have the space in their very small flat to house them, if they've come over through the family scheme, does that still entitle them and me to then go? I haven't made contact with the local authority as of yet. We've really been focused on just trying to settle them and kind of give them the support that they need. Would you say then my next step should be, are they, because they've come over through the family scheme, is there an expectation from the government that actually the family then house them and I shouldn't be contacting the local authority? Or do you feel that that contact is something that should still be made?
I would make contact with the local authority, definitely. To the best of my knowledge, and I will double check this, people coming over under the family scheme also have same entitlements, but I would need to double check that, but certainly it's worth taking up with the local authority.
Okay, thank you. No, that's really helpful. It's been a bit of a minefield. And I think because we are one of the first people that have taken in a family in the UK, it's been very difficult for us to actually try and access some of the services that the government have promised. Even just getting the GP to accept and see them has been a struggle and a half.
Yeah, and I would add as well that I'm sort of answering to the best of my knowledge. Janice is really the expert on these questions. My focus really has been on the work in Ukraine and in country. We've been collaborating and coordinating a lot, but I would also defer to her, and I will take some of these questions up with her afterwards.
Okay, thanks. Thanks, Lisa. Well, keeping in the family. Philippa.
I was going to ask about housing benefit. So now it is confirmed that they will be able to claim housing benefit, because I felt quite strongly I'd really like to help a family, but I don't think we're not as young as we were, and I don't think we'd be able to commit to a 6 month, and we're not always at home, we're away. So if somebody came to us initially and then we were to look for accommodation for them, would we be able to then say, right, we found you a home and we're going to help you claim benefits, etc.? Would that be an avenue?
So there is a hard requirement that people who are sponsoring Ukrainians under the Homes to Ukraine scheme can guarantee accommodation for 6 months.
Okay.
There's not an expectation that you will be there to provide them with support or befriending, or there's no expectation to provide meals, anything like that. It's the basics of statutory expectation is purely to provide at least one room. Obviously, we hope that lots of people will want to share meals and will want to provide that support in addition to just giving somewhere to live, but that's not actually a requirement. But you do, under this scheme, need to be able to guarantee accommodation for 6 months.
So it's your own accommodation, not final accommodation.
Yes, it has to be your own accommodation. It doesn't have to be your house that you live in. So, for instance, some people have come to us saying they have a rental property, and that is fine. But at the moment, yes, you need to be able to provide and guarantee something for 6 months. This is also kind of only phase 1 of the scheme. So we're, this is the status quo as of now, and the rules or the avenues might change.
Okay.
Thanks, Philippa. And that's Judith.
Hello, Judith. I just wanted to thank you because it's been really informative. It's great to have some clear information. And Rabbi David for arranging this. There was 2 things I wanted to one to ask you and one for clarification. Is you're talking about families. Would you be matching young adults, for example, 27-year-olds up to 32-year-olds? Or are they not part of the equation? I just wanted to check.
Yes, so I've been saying families as shorthand.
Yes, I thought.
Yes.
I just want to check.
Yeah, young adults, single adults. So on the host side, there's no limitation in terms of age, demographic, and actually same on the Ukrainian side as well. But as to my knowledge, the only limit is not unaccompanied children. But again, I want to double check that.
Right, okay, thank you. I just wanted to share something with regard to community support. As one of the Board of Deputies in Muswell Hill Shul, Hampstead Garden Suburb, this is just something we've been thinking. And obviously it's, Rabbi David, you're running this as Muswell Hill, which is, so I don't want to interfere with that. But we were thinking that perhaps once the families arrive, we're jumping slightly forward, that perhaps we could introduce them to other local families at local synagogues. So this is why, which is great, Catherine, you've come from Hampstead Garden Suburb, and also possibly we do the same with Highgate. So I'm just sharing it with everybody, because we don't know how many families we're having, but we may find that we've got some that really would match in with another, or they've got really a lot of common interests. And talking of community support, just because I was talking to my own kids who are sort of 28, 31, 32, 32, we'd like to offer, this is just a thought, we're not offering to house, but the young ones would be very happy to meet other young Ukrainians to help them, you know, settle in any way they could. I just thought I'd share that. I'm sure lots of people have got other things, but I'll share that.
Well, that's very helpful. I think, I mean, Dave, well, the Con family have their hand up, so I'll come to them. But I think afterwards it's worth us all thinking, and maybe with your support a little bit, Judith, any advice you might want to give in terms of what are the sort of things the community could offer.
Yeah, that's
opportunity. And then Judith's point is quite right, of what we can pull together. And that could be, again, as Catherine mentioned, mapped to other communities as well. And it could be a model that we support. But so thanks, Judith. Let's come back to that in a minute.
I have to go at 8. I've got another meeting, so
Well,
I'm sorry.
To be honest, I think ideally we would want to finish this by 8. Judith has.
I didn't want to think I was being rude.
No, we're all busy, and I know that I'm sure Judith is busy, and it's even, you know, you're evening too. So I think ideally 8 o'clock would be a good time, I think, to finish. So let's go to the cons. Whichever of the cons that is. That's David. Hello, David. Nice to see you.
Hello. Yes. So thank you for all of the information we've had so far. I want to try and sort of eliminate any sort of duplication here. But what I was thinking of, and this is from experience of myself moving countries twice, although in far less traumatic circumstances, but the process of actually settling in, getting your way through the bureaucracy, getting a national insurance number, getting a school, a bank account, which is really, really important and really quite difficult sometimes, because sometimes you can't get a home without a bank account, you can't get a job without a bank account, you can't get a home without a job, and a job without a home, and all that sort of thing. So navigating your way through all of this, what I was thinking about is some sort of buddy service, so that a family or an individual would be linked up with somebody to actually guide them through that and really tailor it to that person. So if that person wants to do it themselves, that's fine, or they don't need it, but but provide whatever is needed, but also develop resources so that we can actually do this quickly and efficiently rather than reinventing the wheel each time. A little bit along the lines of what we did in Muswell Hill Synagogue at the start of the pandemic. We had a technical support hotline for mainly elderly people who needed online access. So they wanted to get, so it was getting people on Zoom and that sort of thing so they could participate in the community. And I don't know how many people the synagogue helped altogether. I think I was responsible for about 6 or 7 people, getting them online from scratch, talking them through how to install Zoom over the phone without being able to see them or their computer. So sort of along those lines, a group of people who would be available to step in when somebody needed help and actually would be the sort of the bureaucratic concierge.
I mean, I think you're absolutely right that is a complete minefield when you're in a new country, and particularly if you don't necessarily know the language and have come in traumatic circumstances. For me, the first step is for us to identify to what extent casework will be provided by local councils, and we hope that families will have access to a caseworker, and if that can be done that way, to my mind, that is sort of the first and then most efficient way of providing that support, and then to have kind of additional community social helping people to integrate socially, particularly where we have Jewish communities and potentially Jewish refugees. That's how I would see that working, but we need to clarify exactly what casework will be provided at council level.
Yes, and so as I said right at the beginning, not wanting to reinvent the wheel, but where there is perhaps a caseworker for the council, a caseworker for whatever, perhaps something to bring it together if that is already there. So if we could just note that down, and perhaps if there are other people in the community who want to express interest in becoming involved with that, could do it maybe through Rabbi David, I don't know. Thank you.
That's really helpful, David. And I suppose, I mean, firstly, are there any other points people would like to raise or questions? Please do come. I mean, I think there is a question there as to how we as a community take this forward. Is it just a waiting game in the sense that we wait for, families to have, to be matched with refugees? Do you have any other ideas as to how we might, as a communal, structure, I don't mean the community structure, but as members of a community, build a network specific for supporting Ukrainians? I don't know if anyone's got any thoughts on that. But Margaret, please. It's very nice to see you, by the way, Margaret.
Thank you. It's a question really for Catherine, because Hampstead Garden Suburb have got these wonderful links with the Lviv community, which they've been supporting for many years. And Jackie Wolse and I visited them quite a number of years ago. Have any families or individuals applied to World Jewish Relief who are known to Hampstead Garden Suburb? Because that would be potentially a marvelous source of named Ukrainians.
She's not here. She's had to leave.
I can ask her. I'm in contact with her, Margaret.
Yeah, I mean, yeah.
I off the top of my head, I don't think we've had many individuals from Lviv, but yes, it's worth tapping into that. Obviously, I wouldn't know from our list who is known to Hampstead Garden Suburb.
Thank you.
Thanks, Margaret. Yeva.
Thank you for that. Apologies, I came late. So this, you may have already answered this, and I apologize for asking again if you have. It's very confusing because sometimes there's people on Facebook or people are saying, does anyone can take this family or that family? I don't know whether to wait for World Jewish Relief or to take someone from a Facebook post, or someone who knows someone, or a relative of someone, or so you may have already answered that, but I wonder whether what you would suggest and what your advice would be in terms of how to be of service, because I am on the list. I am on your list. I also speak Russian, but not very well, because I left what was then the Ukraine, but what was then the Soviet Union when I was 5. So my Russian is pretty poor, but I can probably still communicate, which I think is an advantage. But yes, so hopefully you can answer that for me.
Yeah, I mean, it's difficult, and ultimately it's a question for you to determine whether you feel comfortable making these connections through Facebook, or whether you would rather go through an organization. One thing that you could do would be to refer people that you've seen on Facebook or in Instagram to us, and then because we have a system for host families to sign up, and we have a system for Ukrainian residents or citizens to sign up. So that might be one option. Yeah, I mean, it's hard for me to tell you, go for it or don't go for it. That's up to your personal discretion. If you want to find people directly through some of these social media networks, the chances are you will be able to that will be quicker, but perhaps less rigorous. But certainly I will raise with Janice the question that's come up before, and that I think is relevant here, as to what support, or would we be able to bring in people who've matched with somebody outside of us? Do we have the capacity to then bring them into the fold of the support that we're offering? At the moment, I don't have an answer to that, but it's definitely an important question.
And in terms of timing, what is the timing for World Jewish Relief? Is that months? Is that weeks?
We don't know exactly, but we're anticipating around 4 weeks between sort of somebody signing up and then having a match, just so that allows us to do a sort of a bit more rigorous due diligence safeguarding checks.
Right. Thank you.
Thanks, Yeva. That's great. Anyone else? And I'm just wondering, part of me wonders whether we need to have to build a network of those here and anyone else. I'm always a fan of a WhatsApp group, although we get a bit too many of them, but something that is a network for us to be able to maybe feed information that comes from World Jewish Relief, and to be also ready as a community to support those who host. So again, how does that feel to people? Please do come in on that. In other words, there will be a few people, I'm sure, who will host, and there'll be more people who aren't able to host but can support, can help with meals, I don't know, can buy Oyster cards, can, Buddy can, help, as David Conn said, with the tech side. That's a little mini project, which is a communal one in itself. How does that feel to, just, do come in with any comments on how you feel that can work. And if anyone here would also be willing to coordinate that in a way, because I suppose my role is bringing everyone together, rather than being obviously the ultimate coordinator moving forward, just as with the asylum seeker community in the National. So if someone is willing to coordinate, thinks about that, then, or more, one or two of you, that'd be great. Annette, I can see you put your hand up.
I think it would be great if we had a debrief on what's worked well and what hasn't worked with the asylum seekers as a starting point, and then build on that, because we've learned so much from what we've done there, and then maybe that gives us some sort of baseline to start with, so that we're not going with a blank piece of paper.
I think, yes, that's a really, really good point. I think there will be a difference between, there is going to be a difference between that emergency situation where 70 people are plonked by the government in a hotel, who, have had to go across in what is known as illegal manner, in a sense, right through the channel on dinghies or whatever, to those who will have come in what obviously has then been termed a legal route, who will have a home and a room. So there'll be a basic, they'll have the possibility for meals on site. So in some ways, I don't know what everyone else feels, that might be already a good structure. It'll be easier in a way. There'll be 4 families who are Muslim, or families who will be doing the bed, they'll have the bed, the place, and it'll be structured around that in a way. So there's in some way that might be a little bit different, but you're right also, and could go alongside. I think there's it won't necessarily need the Sunday lunch every month for 60 people, however many turn up, or the pop-in on Thursday, because it's it might be 4 families. So it might be that actually there will be some way we get them together, or help. I don't know if there are teenage boys that come over, that we take them to the football, and help. There's lots of different interventions that we can offer. I don't know anyone else, but that's really helpful. Anyone else who wants to come in on that, please do. It'd be really good to hear your thoughts. This is a good chance to hear what you're thinking. How do you feel? Is that Barbara there?
Yeah. The way I would think of it is 2 categories. One, the families that host, obviously, and their needs, and then the community that want to support the people that have come over and the families hosting them. But there's also 2 categories of need, possibly, which is the immediate need, which is making sure the home has everything that their new residents are going to have. And you won't know necessarily that much, you won't have that much time to prepare if you don't know who you're going to be matched with, and even down to clothes and cots or beds, or those sort of practical things. That's the first need. And then you've got the longer term need, which is supporting the Ukrainians and their families, because 6 months is a long time, and perhaps a befriender or more than one, depending on who they've got, children and adults. Or, but I think the first need is I think community members won't necessarily automatically contact the shul when they come, when they get a family. But if we could reach out and say we're trying to support everybody and that they should, because not everybody would automatically think to contact the shul, I don't think.
Yeah, I mean, when I put out something about this a week or so, I mean, earlier on, there were a few families that had got in touch, said they were interested, and that in some ways led to this. I was thinking, well, actually, yeah, there's going to be a few, we're thinking about this. And there were a number of people who said, oh, we can't house, but we can help. So that really, you put that really, really helpfully, Barbara, really helpfully, I think, in terms of the two groups and also the two needs, the immediate need and the ongoing 6 month need. No, that's really helpful thing, Karen.
Yeah, thank you. Just to say that we did have a meeting today of the Muswell Hill Welcomes kind of organisers, Sophie from Haringey Council and Matt from Methodist Church. We were having an update to decide how Muswell Hill Welcomes, which has obviously been set up by us and the church, and also BB Khan was there from the mosque. So we met to decide what's the best way forward, and it was decided, just so everyone knows, Sophie from Haringey, there will be support from Haringey Council. So she wants it to carry on under the Muswell Hill Welcomes banner. So certainly the open Thursdays that we've already got will still be there for anyone that comes from Ukraine, possibly lunches or whatever, but we've already got our WhatsApp support group. We've already got this Facebook group and website for Muswell Hill Welcomes. And she was saying Muswell Hill Welcomes is to welcome any refugees wherever they come from. So it's not about this refugee or that refugee. It's about anyone who needs refuge in our country. So there's no reason to start another project or banner. And so Haringey is there to support us, and there'll be various projects that they'll run. They'll run training for people. They'll run support. So once we know a bit more about who's coming or who's here, Sophie will probably come to another meeting with us about whoever is hosting. Haringey will support them and we'll be there for them. And there'll be other what's the word? Sorry, I've got COVID, so I'm a bit fuzzy. There'll be other support offered to the various people that do host. Resources, that's the word I was looking for. Whoever said that, thank you. Yeah.
Yeah.
Get well, Karen. And Lisa. Sheila, did you want to come in?
Well, I was just thinking it's more along the lines of what people are describing the secondary level, but we're going to be receiving very traumatized people. And I think the trauma needs to be really, I'm sure I couldn't be teaching WJR anything at all, but it is going to be very much a secondary effect that families are going to need a lot of support with, I would guess. And I suppose there are plenty of us within the community who could offer that sort of support. But I mean, it's like fostering or adopting very traumatized children, and this is going to be particularly featuring, I would guess.
Thanks, Sheila. I see Melinda also. Yeah, is that your hand, Melinda? Yeah, do you want to come in?
Yeah, I mean, the key difference between with this, it might sound stating the obvious, is that they are coming to homes and not coming into hotels. The hotels are saturated with Afghans and Somalians and other people who've come across in the dinghies. That, so that this is the key difference, is that the families will be hosting them in their homes, and as we've probably already alluded to, there's a level of support between those families themselves that will be needed, as well as the obvious support that's going to be needed for the Ukrainians settling here in many different levels on health, education, psychologically, and everything we've already said, and I won't go over again. But there's also that network between us as hosting families that is important, and I think that's the unknown bit. We've not done this before, even with when Grenfell happened and people were displaced, they went into hotels. When the Afghanis came over, they went into hotels mainly.
And yeah, just to add to that as well, among a list of things which are still to be decided, trauma support is on them, is on the list that we're looking as an organisation as to what can be provided, who's best to provide that, whether that's sort of through the JLC, whether it's through councils. But we recognise that there will be a need for trauma counselling and looking at how and who best to provide.
I just, it's funny, I don't know fully, but I just sense a lot of people in the room here who aren't necessarily involved in the volunteering for for our asylum seeking friends in the national, and therefore, you know, yeah, of course, you want to join everything up, but it does, you know, would be far from making sense that we create something around the people, the energy here to support Ukrainian refugees, and if people are still helping asylum seekers, that's fine, and we can link up as and when is needed. They might still have a different footprint of help, and so it is. I mean, I'll think about it, but I might set something up which I will then send out to the community that you join, because even if it is 4 weeks, we can still think about, and think with your help, what we might need. Right, it's 8:01. Jane, I know you're going to come in very quickly if you could. Because Jane wants to refer to Edinburgh, which is my hometown, although of course this is Muswell Hill, not Edinburgh, but I always like hearing about Edinburgh. But if you can be very brief, Jane, that'd be great.
Yeah, I'll be really quick because it's really kind of you to have me at all. But it's just that I put my name down, and I just wanted to know whether, you know, you're going to go outside London. That's basically it, to places like Edinburgh.
We're taking obviously interest from everywhere. We're starting in London because that's where we have the greatest concentration of people, and we're hoping to be able to place a group of Ukrainians with a group of sponsors nearby each other in one borough, in one council, so that we can create some kind of cohesion. So at the moment we're looking at London, but that is likely to change and to broaden.
Thank you.
Great. Lisa, is that your hand up from before, or is that they call it a legacy hand, or is that a present hand? Would that be a last comment?
Yeah, it was another hand. I was just going to say, if people do take people quite quickly and they need a bit of support, I'm happy to provide, or for people to contact me. I have at work, we have compiled a list of people who have come forward offering to help, including a couple of Russian speaking counsellors who have offered to do some pro bono free counselling work. So even though it's really small scale, if there's any other kind of early people before WJR managed to get their support networks in place, that you think maybe, Mark, if you're kind of further down the process and need some support, just get in contact with me and I'll see if there's anything that I can do to provide that support.
And I posted the synagogue, Muswell Synagogue WhatsApp group in the chat. If you're not on that group, it's a very good way of finding out what's going on, and it will be a way in which we can build another group if we need to around Ukraine. I mean, I'll email the community as well. But if you would also like to, thanks Judith as well for the last questions. If you would like to coordinate, if you feel that that's something you would like to do and help me and coordinate within the community over the next few weeks leading up to when people would, please be in touch. And if you are hosting as well, you know, tell me, because it'd be good to know from within the community who are hosts. I'm assuming that we wouldn't be able to get that from World Jewish Relief because of GDPR. Probably, I don't know, but unless that's something that you can do, obviously tell us. But we can talk about that. But certainly, there's no reason why, if you're here and you'd like to and wanted to already have, tell me, because it'd be really good to know, to be able to build the support. We want to help those who host, and that's really, we want to be able to help around that, help the families that are coming, and help the hosts of those families as well. Judith, really massive thank you for your time. We can clap, I think, you know, I know we do that for, this is but I mean, thank you, because really that was very, very helpful. And it was great that so many came. Thank you, all of you, for taking the time out of your evening, and let's stay in touch and support Ukrainians.
Thank you for having me, and thank you all so much for your support. I'm aware that there are some questions that I need to take away and clarify with Janice and with my colleagues, and I'll look into those.
Yeah, be back to me if you want to use me as a initial conduit for any info, and I can send that out to the community as well. So great. Keep well, everyone. Anyone with COVID, please get better. And keep well. Bye, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you,
Thanks,
Judith.
Rabbi. Good meeting. Bye.
Thank you.